What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. Today is going to be a fun project. Today, we're going to build together an AI chatbot for the Expo documentations. This is going to be a RAG tutorial, which stands for Retrieval-Augmented Generation. And in this intro, to shortly explain what that is, first I'm going to have to mention about the large language models. So a large language model is a general purpose AI model that that are really great at understanding and generating text. Think about the models behind ChatGPT, which are really great at understanding and generating text, but they lack information, like very specific information about your project or information that you have in your database, in your knowledge base. So a RAG system is basically a large language model together powered with a knowledge base. For example, the database from your application, the documentations that you have, and when you put them together, you have factual information, you have very specific information generated by the large language model. So the flow goes like this. A user asks questions. First of all, our system will retrieve the most relevant information from our system that is close to the prompt that the user gave. And using this information, using these facts, we are pushing it through a large language model, and then we generate the response, and also we are able to redirect to the right documentation page. That's exactly what we're going to build today. At least we're going to attempt to build today. And we're going to do that using the Expo documentations, because Expo Docs have more than 1,000 pages, so it's a lot of content. We have what to work with, and all the documentations are also stored as MD files on GitHub, but they are public, and it's going to be easy to work with that. For the stack, we're going to use OpenAI models. For the database, we're going to use the vector database, the Postgres vector database on top of Supabase. And for the user interface, we're going to use Expo, and everything we're going to try to keep building using TypeScript. So that's the plan. If you're ready, I think we can get started. Hey everyone in the live chat, how are you doing, guys? Actually, today is a very special live stream because this is the last live stream from the current office. So the background, everything that you see here, this is going to be the last time we have it in a video, because from the next week I'm moving out. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for the new chapter. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I was playing around with some AI tools, and I've built this AI bot based on the Expo Docs, and here is a small demo. Here I have it as a script, like without any user interface, and I'm asking it simple Expo-based questions, like what command should I run to initialize a new project. It gives me the exact command, and it gives me links to the specific documentations where I can find out more about that. I will ask another question. It's gonna do the same. It's gonna find like the most appropriate documentation. Based on that information, it's going to generate a short answer, and it's also going to provide the URLs where the user can learn more about that. So this is exactly what we're going to build, but also we're going to create a nice user interface using Expo that is going to run on mobile and also on web. So it should be fun. It should be fun. I'm very excited. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention, like, I'm not an AI expert. I'm here playing around, trying to figure things out, and I would like to share this journey with you. So if you're interested, if you're on the same journey, if you're excited about all of these new technologies, I think it's going to be fun to practice together. So here is what I prepare for you. But yeah, a lot of things are super easy nowadays. It's just a matter of the tools that we want to use and putting them together. Like AI is very accessible nowadays, so it's really fun playing and building stuff with it. Anyway, let's go ahead and yeah, before I get started, let me see the live chat, and I'm gonna put it somewhere here. How are you doing, guys, today? Are you excited for this one? Hello, Catalin. Hello, Brain Power, Giulio, Rogelio, Shaquille, Weird Dev, Aditya, Fabio, Francesco. Hello, guys. Congratulations on the new office. I don't have it yet, but from the next week, I'm gonna start building a new office in a new city, very far away, around 3,000 kilometers away from here. Anyway, let me put the chat here so I can see it, and then I think we can get started. Okay, so let me explain a little bit how the whole system that we are going to build is going to work, and slowly we're going to implement all of these steps together. So here on the right side is the first flow. This is where, okay, I didn't share the code, so here it is. Here on the right side, this is the first flow. This is where we are going to create our knowledge base. So we're gonna use the Expo documentation as our knowledge base. We're gonna retrieve all of those documentations, and for each documentation page, we're going to generate the embedding. We're gonna put it through an embedding model, and as a result, we're gonna get a vector. A vector is basically number representation of a text. It's an array of numbers, and having these vectors will allow us to later find similarities between different documentation pages, or even between the user prompt and a specific documentation page. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm going for a flu as well. Anyway, we're gonna get this vector, and we need to store it into a database that is able to process operations on those vectors. So we're gonna store this vector in a vector database, and then this is going to be our knowledge base. This is where we're gonna store our information that is going to use to augment the large language model. Then after we do this ahead of time, then the user will come to our application, and this is the second flow. The user comes to our application, he asks a question, he gives us a prompt. We're gonna put his prompt through the same embedding model, that's important, and we're gonna get back again a vector. Using the vector that represents the user prompt, we can look through the vector database and find the most relevant documentations based on the similarity. We will find the vectors that are closest to the user prompt. We're gonna get those documentations, and we're gonna feed them into a large language model. For example, the GPT-4o, which is the latest one, but from OpenAI. After that, we build the final answer, which will have both a text, like a short answer, and also links towards the Expo documentations that we used here at the top, so that the user knows like where to find more information about his prompt. This system is great as to build like chatbots for your application, for your documentations, to build very aware chatbots that can find the right page or find the right information. So let's get started. To keep it simple at the beginning, I will go ahead and create everything as what's going on here, as locally as notjust scripts. And then slowly we're gonna move them where they have to be. Maybe in some edge functions, or on our backend, on our database, we're gonna see. But first I want to see some functionalities in some very simple scripts. So let's go ahead, and I'm gonna open projects. Let's go to notjust.dev. Let's make a dear AI chat bot, and let's make a dir here for the chatbot Chatbot scripts. Let's go ahead and open this folder, Chatbot scripts in Visual Studio Code, so that we can create some files here. Come on, come on, come on. Like this. We don't have any files yet, so let's open a terminal and let's do npm init to initialize -y to initialize a new notjust project. Here we have a notjust project. Let's go ahead and add, I don't know, an index.js file here. That will simply say console log hello. Now what we can do from the terminal, we can execute this script by running node index.js. We see hello here. Okay, perfect. We have a place where we can start working. The first step that we have to do, based on our diagram, is to retrieve the documentations from our knowledge base, which in our case, that's going to be the Expo documentation. If we go to Expo Docs, we're going to see that we have a lot of pages here. But if you go to one of these pages, if you go to the bottom, you have an edit this page, which opens up the page inside their public GitHub repository. So as we can see, all the pages are stored in these docs, and the format of the pages is Markdown. Well, it's actually MDX because they are also using this custom React component inside the Markdown. But for us, we can treat it as Markdown and basically ignore everything that is here and only work with the Markdown itself. So let's go ahead and create a function that will parse the Expo documentation. We'll fetch this data from GitHub. So the function, we can call it parse Expo Docs. It's going to receive the slug as a string, or maybe we can ignore for now because we're using JavaScript. And based on this slug, which represents the URL part, as you can see, for example, this page has the slug get started / start developing. So maybe I'm gonna copy this slug here and I will call the function parse Expo Docs with this. Should I have get a slash at the beginning or not? Probably not. Yeah, get started / start developing. This is going to be the slug of our first page, and the page itself rendered is here in the Expo Docs. And on GitHub, the same page is at the end at the URL. So it's docs / pages. If I'm gonna copy this GitHub, on GitHub, the pages looks like this, where we have GitHub, Expo, edit. Maybe we don't need edit itself. Let me cancel changes just. Yeah, this is going to be a better preview. So let me copy this URL. Expo, main, docs, pages, and then we have get started, start developing, which is exactly the slug here. And based on this slug, the public page is going to be this one. I'm bringing them here just for us to see how the URLs are created and how we can get them here. So having this slug, let's go ahead and fetch this data. So first of all, we need to build this URL from where we're gonna fetch the data. So the URL is going to be a template string where we take this URL and instead of the last part, we're gonna put here the slug, the dynamic slug, so that we take any kind of page based on the slug. van.mdx. I think I should even delete the blob from here, but to double check if I can, I'll open it like this. Not found. Oh, because I need to check it as raw. So if I press here raw, because we're gonna fetch it, so I want to fetch only the raw version. So this is the URL we need to fetch. The raw MD format. So for that reason, I'm gonna copy this part, the beginning of a URL. I'm gonna put it here so that it's raw, GitHub, Expo main docs pages, slug.mdx. Okay, now we can go ahead and fetch this URL using fetch API. So fetch URL, and this is an await, so it made the function async. And we can get the content of the response by doing await response dot. It's going to be as a text because it's not JSON, it's a simple text content here. Let's go ahead and do a console log content and make sure that it works. At the end here, we're calling the function parse docs, so we should be able to see the content there if we invoke the index. We invoke the index, so yes, we see the content starting with title, description, and so on, and then it goes into the actual content of that page. Perfect. So having this content, the part at the top that you see here between these lines, this is called front matter. This is a way to provide structural key value pairs or structural data into MD files. So if we look at the front matter, we're going to be able to parse it properly and get the title of a page, which we're going to need a bit later. So front matter, let's look at it on npm. Where is this package that can allow us to extract metadata from documents, and the metadata is this one. So let's go ahead and install front matter in our project. I'm gonna do it here, npm install front matter. And the example here, so for example, if we have this content, we can use front matter to parse the data using fm from front matter. So in our code, instead of console log at the top, let's go ahead and import fm, which stands for front matter, from front matter. Now having the text content, we can say const data is equal fm, and then we can give there the content. If now I'm gonna console log the data itself, what will we see? Let's execute the script, notjust index, and yes, we cannot do this kind of imports here. Let's switch this to a type module in package. Where is it? Type, no? Is it here? Type module. So now we're going to be able to do import like that. Yes. So the front matter parsed has the attributes at the top with title, description, and hide something, which is exactly what we saw here in the MD file. And then it contains the body, which starts with the content right after the top front matter. So it splits into metadata and content. And that one goes into the body. Okay, so I think with the parse docs we are good. We can go ahead and return this data from here. And this function that receives the slug and parses the documentation is ready for us. We can move on to the next step. And the next step, now that we can retrieve docs, Maybe we should, yeah, let's think. So first we're gonna get the data, then we need to embed, to generate the vector for this content. Let's think where we're gonna do it. Probably here. Let's create a function const handle doc. It's also going to receive this slug. I'm just simply separating everything into different functions. It's going to do const data equal first parse the Expo Docs using this slug, and then we need to generate vector based on the content from the docs. Now we can simply call the handle docs instead of parsing Expo Docs. So to generate the vector, we're gonna use OpenAI models. OpenAI docs. Let's go ahead, open the docs. Introduction. They have libraries for notjust so that we can integrate directly with their models. Let's go ahead in the quick start. What do we need to do here? First of all, you need to set up your account on OpenAI. The account is free, but you're paying based on the usage. So you need a credit card, and based on this tutorial, we're not gonna spend a lot of money, but anyway, just know that the OpenAI account is paid. So let me see where I can show you some tutorials. Models, let's check this one, the GPT-4. This is the model that we're gonna use. Or maybe on npm OpenAI. It's gonna be easier. So npm OpenAI, this is going to be the package that we're gonna use to integrate OpenAI. So let's go ahead and first install it in our project. npm install OpenAI. You missed node on quick start. Node on quick start. In the quick start, there is node. Oh, notjust. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So on the documentation, I was trying to show you like where to find more. You need notjust, and then you can do npm install OpenAI. Then we need to set up our API key. On macOS, we can do that either by doing export OpenAI key and here providing your key, or we can edit the bash profile. Let me think how I'm gonna do it. To make it easier for us to work with. Let me just double check something. I'm going to open my bash profile just to make sure that I have the API key there. Yeah, I'm gonna add my OpenAI key in my bash profile. Export OpenAI. and I'm gonna get it from my OpenAI dashboard. Okay, come on, save. And so guys, if you go to your OpenAI account, where is the API keys, go ahead and create a new secret key and either execute this export OpenAI key in your terminal, and this is going to set the environment variable for the API key. But this is not going to be permanent, so better you can edit either the bash profile or the ZSHRC. That's what I did, and now I think I'm going to have to do source this file to take effect, and hopefully now my API key is going to work. We're going to see that in a second. Let's continue on the documentation. What do we need to do? We need to make an API request. So first we need to import OpenAI and create the OpenAI instance. I'm gonna do that in our project here. First import, then we create the OpenAI instance. An alternative, if you have issues with environment variables, is to provide here API key and you just hard-coded it here, which is not good for production, but for testing and seeing like if it works, you can use it. If we don't provide it, it's gonna try to take it from the environment variables. Then we can try the simple example that we see here, the completion. And yeah, let's just try this completion to see if at least it works. So in the handle doc, I'm gonna go ahead and do this completion, which will console log. So let's just go ahead and execute the index file. How can I assist you today? So if we see this one, that means that we correctly set up OpenAI and we are able to interact with the completion API. And we see the completion result here. That means that we are good. We have an integration with OpenAI and we can continue to the next step. And our next step is, as you can see, is not yet to generate completions, but to generate vectors. So for that, we need a different kind of model. If we look at the models, there are models for embeddings. Embeddings, as you can see, where is it? Embeddings, just make it larger. The embeddings are a numerical representation of the text that can be used to measure the relatedness between two pieces of text. So it's a simple array of numbers that represents a text, and having two arrays of numbers, we can compare how close or how related are two pieces of text. We're going to need that to understand the most relevant documentation page based on the user query. So we're going to use probably we're going to use the text embedding small, which most probably is going to work fine for us. And this model has 1,536 dimensions, which means that the array of those numbers has 1,536 items or numbers in it. The more numbers, the more dimensions it have, more details it can detect, let's say, from the text, embed. So we're gonna use this model, and we're gonna use it where? Let's double check that. First of all, we're gonna not call chat, but OpenAI. Let me do it like this. Embedding is going to be OpenAI dot embeddings dot create, and here we're gonna send the model that we want to use. So we're gonna use text embedded free small, and what else? We're gonna have to provide the input, right? And the input is going to be what text do we want to generate the embedding for. We're gonna generate it based on the content from the documentations, and that content from documentation is going to be our data.body. And the encoding format, we will specify to encode it as float numbers. Let's console log the embedding dot is going to be data at position 1, and let's see what we get back when trying to generate the embedding for our documentation. If I run that, as we can see, the embedding or the response is an object which contains this vector called embedding that has just a lot of numbers, and it has 1,500 and how much did I say? 36 or something like that in total. So that's our vector. So that const vector is going to be equal to embedding, and because that's an object, we're going to access the embedding itself. All right, so that means that now we have both data and the vector representation of that data. And if we look at our graph, that means that we have the documentation, we have the vector. The next step is going to be to store the vector together with some metadata in a vector database. For the vector database, we are going to use Supabase. Supabase is using Postgres behind the scenes, and they have a vector extension. So let's go ahead and create a new project in here. Let's call it AI Chatbot, and let's provide here a password. Let's generate it like this. I'm gonna copy it. Make sure to copy it. We're gonna need it a bit later. I'm gonna store it somewhere. And now we're gonna wait a bit for Supabase to set up our project. Neo is asking, what are we doing today? Today we're building an AI chatbot for Expo documentation. This is a RAG tutorial, which we're combining like a large language model with a knowledge base, in this case, the Expo documentation, to build a chatbot that can answer Expo-related questions and point us to the right documentation. This would be a great tutorial for anyone that wants to build an AI chatbot on top of some pre-existing information. And so far we have parsed the information, we generated the embedding, and now we want to store it into a vector database that will allow us to find similarities between these vectors, to query the similarities. So here is our project. First of all, let's go to the database and let's go to the extensions. Let's search here vector, and we're gonna enable the vector extension. Let's press enable extension. Enable extension. Okay, vector is 1. Now we can go ahead and to the table editor and create our first table. The table that we're gonna create is going to store some small metadata, some information about different pages on Expo documentation, together with their vector embeddings. So let's go ahead and create a new table. We're gonna call it docs. I think for the purpose of this video, I'm going to simply disable row level security and allow and make this table public. It's going to be easier for us to work with it, and later if we think to go to production, we can enable it. But now let's go to the columns and let's add the columns that we want to store. First of all, and the most important one is going to be the vector embedding. This vector embedding should be of a specific type called vector, which appeared here because we enabled that extension. Now, let's press here to make this column non-nullable. And then, yeah, besides the vector, I would like to store also some metadata, like for example, the URL to the documentation, which is going to be a text. Maybe the what? What else? So from the data, from the documentation here, we have title. Let's also store the title, because title, we're going to use it to display recommendation of documentations. Title, it's also going to be a text. And let's make both of them required by deselecting this is nullable field. Come on. Instead of like as an ID, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to store the slug, which represents one unique page, as the ID. This will also help us to store them only once, not to have duplicated pages that we parsed. So let's go ahead and change the type of our ID to a text. And the ID is going to be the slug. Maybe we can even change it from ID to slug, but I will leave it as ID. That's it. I think that's everything we needed this time. Let's press save. And now Supabase is creating our table. Okay, we have a table with the columns that we specified, with some metadata about the pages and the vector, which is very important for us to be able to do similarity searches. We have a table. We have information here, both data and the vector. Now it's time to simply write it to Supabase. For that, I'm going to install npm install Supabase, the Supabase client. Supabase. Oh, how is it? Let's double check. Supabase gs npm. It's at Supabase/Supabase gs. Let's install this client to be able to interact with our database. Abel is saying, I can't wait for those courses you're going to release in June. Will it have Google Maps API? I also can't wait to do that. That's our upcoming, not just our React Native Mastery course. This is one single course that will include 7 different projects. So if you haven't joined the wait list, now is the time, because we're gonna have a very limited pre-launch to a very small amount of people during the June. I actually today finished the recording the 3rd project. So the first 3 projects are already recorded. We're working on editing them. And during the summer, we're gonna finish all of them. So we are planning to launch it somewhere in autumn. But again, in June, we're gonna open it up for a small amount of people so that we can get a bit of feedback and we can work together. We can have some interactive sessions. So if you're interested, go to notjust.dev React/React Native Mastery. Thank you very much for mentioning that. That's a huge part of where all my time has been going throughout the last couple of months and during the next couple of months as well. Anyway, back to our tutorial. We installed Supabase here. Now we need to create a client. Where is it? Let's import create client and then create a client like this. Where is it? Let's do it like this. We're gonna create a client at the top. Let's move the import also on the top. Create a Supabase client. We need the URL to our project. So the URL to our project, we're gonna get it from the Supabase dashboard. If we go to the project settings, under the API, we're gonna get the URL here. Let's copy it. And let's also get the anonymous key, the public key. I'm gonna put it as the second parameter here. And now I think we should be good to go to start writing to our Supabase. If you need a bit of help like how to write to the database, we can go to the table editor, we can open the docs page, and here there is API docs for this table. We can go to insert rows, and it will show us how we can insert a row. Let's copy it, or let's press copy from here. Let's go back to our project, and under the handle docs, after we have a vector, let's go ahead and save to database. We're gonna paste the code from Supabase. We have duplicated data, so let's call it I don't think we're even going to need this data, so let's just check the error, and let's console log the error to make sure that we don't have any. We're gonna do await Supabase. From the documentation table, from the docs table, we want to insert these columns. So the columns, let's do them as following. What columns do we have? We have an ID, which should be the slug. So ID is going to be the slug that we are working with. The title in our database is going to come from data.attributes.title, because the data, the front matter data, has this title there. The URL of a page, here I think we're gonna store the public URL of how to, where we're gonna redirect the user. So let's take this public URL template, which will open on Expo Docs website. And let's create, when storing it in the database, let's create it like this, but instead of this part of the URL, we're gonna put the dynamic slug. And lastly, we need the vector, which is going to be the vector that we generated there. And if everything is correct, do we have any other columns in our table? We have ID, we created that will be generated automatically, vector, URL, and title. I think we're good. Let's try to run our index file. And if everything is okay, we should have something in our table. And yes, indeed, we have the ID get started. It has this URL. We can double check if we can copy paste it here, if it's gonna open. Yes. We have the title start developing, because that's the title from the front matter. And we have a vector embedding, which is a vector with a lot of numbers. We cannot see it properly here, but it has all the numbers that represents the documentation. So that's it. Now our data is stored in the vector database, and this will allow us to later go ahead and generate embedding for a user prompt and find this the most relevant documentation page by comparing these vectors. But we need a bit more information in the database, right? Not just one of them. So for that reason, we're going to create here, let's do that. Let's create a file, expo or slugs dot, let's do slugs.js, and have all the slugs that we want to work with. We're going to export default an array of slugs. The first one can be this one, get started, start developing. And we have to provide more of them. For example, we can go either to the documentation itself or maybe to the website, and we can get the introduction. So this is the get started introduction at the top. I'm going to take them from the URL because remember what's in the URL, that's the slug, and that's how they will be found in the GitHub as well. We can get create project. We can get the set up your environment. Maybe we don't need that. Start developing. We have that one. Yes. And maybe I'm going to find some documentations that are very not related to this. These 3 documentations are related like to how to get started, but I'm going to find something, for example, for under the deploy. Let's get this one, deploy/build project, so that we can test like based on different user queries, which documentation it redirects us to, so that we can compare and understand like if it makes sense. Submit to App Store. And maybe one more. Instant updates. Let's do that. Now let's go ahead and import these slugs in our index. So let's do import slugs from .slugs. And instead of doing handle doc here, I will create a function. Hey, handle all docs that is going to map through our slugs. And for each slug, we're gonna call handle doc with that slug. But because this handle doc is a promise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of them into an await promise.all so that we await the execution of all the documentations. And this should be async as well. Now, lastly, we can simply call this handle all docs, and it's supposed to go ahead and loop through all the slugs, call handle doc function that we tested that it's working, and await the result of all of them so that they are all in the database. We can go ahead and try to run this code. We see that, did you mean import slugs.js? What? I'm not importing them correctly. Slug export default. It doesn't like it like that, or what? Console log slugs. Oh boy. Cannot find module scripts, chatbot scripts, slugs. Oh, I forgot the .js, right? .js. Yep. Yeah, now we have a list of slugs. The null, this is actually, the error is null, but then we have a failed row constraint because we have already parsed this, the one with get start with the developing. So that's why it has this error. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we should have in our database a couple of pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not sure why. The deploy instant updates didn't work. Can it be because it has like this at the end? Yes. Yes, now it has been added correctly. So now we have 5 pages with all of their vectors. And that means we have some information to work with in our vector database and to go to the next step, which is the user prompting, to try to find like these documentations based on a query from the user. Abel is saying, I think the best course I ever found is the Pizza React Native application. Can't thank you enough. I appreciate that. And our course that I'm working on right now is going to be even better. I can promise you that. What do you need to do to customize it and change the knowledge base to something else? You need to understand how it works and simply change like where you're fetching the data from. That's why I'm trying to explain it like super step by step. So because in general, the system is not very complicated. Like once you understand how the concept works, you can swap like multiple pieces of this part very easily. For example, you can swap the knowledge base from Expo Docs to your knowledge base. For example, if you store information about something specific, let's say you can even like have a note-taking application and the user has a lot of data. He wants to search something, so you can feed like this information from his notes and find like the most relevant note and then feed it to a large language model and answer the user a question. So he can say like, hey, I remember I took a note about a movie, like what was that? And the system can look into his notes and then generate the answer. So the possibilities are limitless. Like it's about like where you get the data. The embedding will remain the same. What you can change here is you can easily change the model that you're gonna use for embedding. I'm using OpenAI models here, but you don't have to. You can use any kind of model that will generate these vector embeddings. The only important part is you have to use the same model both for embedding the knowledge base and both for the user prompt. Because if you use different models, it's not going to have the same output. So this is the only requirement. What model you can use open source models if you don't want to pay, or if you think about the privacy of your information. You can use local models. Any kind of models that can generate embedding can be used here. Then what do we have? Vector database. Again, you don't have to use Supabase here. You can use any kind of vector, any kind of database that supports vector search. So the database not only should be able to store these vectors, it should also be able to do similarity search. We're going to do that in the next step. So basically, we're going to say, hey Supabase, based on this vector, what are the most similar vectors from our database? And give me that similarity. So if the database can do that, if it can support vector searches, then you can use it in your system here for the vector database. Again, there is nothing hard requirement here. Lastly, we're going to use a large language model. Here again, I'm going to use something from OpenAI, the GPT-4o. In your case, you can use any kind of models. Again, open source, public, local, any kind of models that can generate text. And that's it. All of these building blocks, they can work independent of each other and they can be swapped. It's just a matter of understanding this concept, because it's like from the concept perspective, like it's not super complicated. And if you have questions, please ask me, because I'm just a little bit ahead. Like I don't know everything. I'm still learning a ton. And yeah, I would love to share like what's the confusing part here. What I should go more in depth. What I should, I don't know, explain better or give more examples. If you know of something better, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn and to see other ways, because as I said, this is not the only way to do it. Oh, have a flu or cold, something like that, and I'm running out of breath. So as I said, the first flow for data retrieval and ingestion is done. The next step, to take it from here, the way to improve it is to basically automatically get like all the slugs and generate these embeddings for all the documentation pages, for all 1000 and something documentation pages. As this is a proof of concept, I'm gonna work with these 6 documentations. If it works, it's going to be to scale it and just parse and generate embeddings for the rest of them. But for the testing is perfect because we have like two different topics, one for getting started, one for deploying. We're going to be able to test like with different prompts to see if we get relevant advice and relevant documentation links. Okay. Moving on to the next part. The next part is about user prompting. User prompting. So we're going to have a prompt. Let's go ahead and create a new file here called prompt.ts. Not TS, let's do it JavaScript. I decided to stick to JavaScript for now. We're going to have a const prompt equal is going to be a function, is going to receive the query of the prompt, like what is the user asking, and it should return something, or it should console log something. Let's simply console log the query. Let's simulate, cannot redeclare, but where did we declare it again? Oh, it's the file, and it cannot be run prompt. Come on. Let's call this run prompt and send here, I don't know, how to initialize a new Expo project. This is going to be the template prompt that we're gonna work with. Now, if I'm gonna go ahead in our terminal and do node prompt.js, it's going to display this prompt on the screen. Okay, so now we have a user query, the user prompt. What we need to do in the first step is to generate the same embedding with the same embedding model. We need to generate the vector embedding for the user prompt. We're gonna already look back at the index and see how we did that here in the embedding, vector, and so on. Maybe we can even extract it into a separate function, into a separate file, because we are using it in separate places, and maybe it's going to help us make our code a bit more understandable. So let's create a file, embeddings. Is that correct? No. Embeddings.js, and let's here export const generate embedding for an input, right? Now from the index, I'm going to copy this part. Let's copy it to the generate embedding. Let's make this function async. We need OpenAI here, so I'm gonna go back to take the OpenAI and probably also the import from OpenAI. So we need to first import OpenAI, create the client, and then for the input, we're gonna use the parameter there, so I can delete the data body, and we're going to simply return the vector, the actual embedding. Okay, so this function can be used back in our project here for getting the embedding. So instead of taking it from here, we're gonna get it by calling await get or generate. How did we call it? Generate embedding, and we're gonna send data.body, the input. Now the code here becomes a bit easier to understand. And also we no longer need OpenAI here. And yep, that's it. Now the same generate embedding function that we used for generating the vectors for our knowledge base, for our documentations, we're gonna use them in the prompt. So here in the prompt, let's do const vector equal await generate embedding based on the user query. The function became async, and we can do a console come on, console log vector. If I run the prompt script, again, we need to do import from embeddings.js. And I think in index, we should also do the same, but it worked. Let's do prompt. And as you can see, based on this prompt, we moved it through the same embedding model, and we got a vector back. That's as simple as that. Now using that vector, we need to query our database and say, give me the most similar vectors to this one. Behind the scene, to understand it, like, it's basically a lot of math, drawing the vector and seeing which one is the closest to the two vectors. It's just in a matter of a lot of dimensions, like thousands of dimensions. Let's go ahead in the Supabase documentation to check how we can get this similarity search. Supabase vector, I'm gonna search. Here it is. Let's explore documentation. And where do we want to go? Vector columns, let's see. This is how to create, this is how to store. And here is how we can query. So similarity search is the most common use case for vectors, finding like similar items. And the PG vector extension that we enable supports 3 operators for computing this distance. It has this is basically the formula used to compare the difference between how similar are the items. So this operator is going to be used for Euclidean distance. This is for product, and this is for cosine distance. I don't know a lot about them, and I'm not going to try to explain them, but we're going to use the cosine distance to compare the difference. So basically, we're going to use this operator. And the thing is that the Postgres client, basically the Supabase client that we use to write the embedding, where is it? In the index. We use the Supabase to insert the document. This client does not yet support the operators for similarity search. So we cannot use the client to run a query based on similarity, but we can create a function, a database function on the database layer that will do this search. Let's go ahead and copy this document from here, and we're going to adjust it a little bit to match our database structure. So let's go back to our Supabase. I'm actually going to open it in a new dashboard so I can go back here to look at the table names and so on. And from our documentation, let's go to the SQL editor. The SQL editor allows us to execute pure SQL functions. This function that we copied from the documentation, where is the documentation? Already lost it. From these vector columns for under the query vector embedding, this is going to create a database function, a function that is running straight on the database layer. So let's see what we should adjust, and pay attention exactly what we are doing. First of all, create or replace function mesh documents. Mesh documents is going to be the name of our function. We can keep it mesh documents. We can change it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to change as minimum as possible. Then this function will receive 3 properties. It will receive a vector embedding that we want to search for. It will receive a match threshold and the match count. For the vector embedding here, it specifies a number. This is the representation of how many dimensions is our vector. If you're not sure how many dimensions are our vectors, we can go into the prompt and we can say console log vector dot length, because dimensions is basically how many numbers are in our vector. And we see that it's 1536. So 1536. If you're using a different model, just make sure that you're using the same amount of the same dimension here based on your model. As you saw, I was looking at models in OpenAI. So this model that we are using, that free small, has this amount of dimensions. If we would use the large model, we would have to use 3072. Okay, match threshold, we're gonna use it to only return the documents that are above some similarity score, not to return everything. And match count is how many documents do we want to search for. What it returns a table, a new table, with these fields. The ID, which is big int, which in our case is not the case, because we changed the ID to be the slug, so the ID is going to be a text. Let's change it ID to text. Title, we have also the title, text, but we don't have a body. Instead, we have a URL. The URL is going to be text, and we are adding a new field to this on-the-fly table that we're creating. The field is going to be the similarity, and it's going to represent how similar is a document to the query vector that we are searching for. What else? ID, title, URL. Let me check if I need anything else. ID, we probably don't even create that, so I'm not gonna use it. Title and URL. Yeah, I think that's everything we need here. Now what we're doing is we are selecting documents. Let me first show you this from documents. This is from which table are we selecting. Our table is called docs. For that reason, we need to change here to docs, and everywhere you see documents, change to docs. And pay attention, because we have it in a couple of places. And you can even do a search here, documents. And it's only one match, which is here, which is fine. This is the name of the function. Okay, so from the documents, we're selecting the ID. This is the ID. We are selecting the title. And instead of body, we need to select the URL. And lastly, for the similarity, we are using this operator. Remember, from the documentation in the vector, we have 3 similarity operators. This operator is the cosine distance. So we are calculating the cosine distance, and then we are subtracting it from 1. Meaning, the closer together the vector will be, their difference is going to be very small, which means the similarity should be very big. That's why we are doing 1 minus something, because this is that difference, but we want to calculate the similarity. So we're going to select it from the docs, where this similarity that we calculated is more than the threshold. So we're going to be able to set, like, give me documents that basically the similarity is more than 50% or 70%. Then we're going to sort by the cosine difference, meaning that the closer the documents to each other are, they will appear on the top. And we're going to limit by the match count parameter that we're going to send. And if we didn't make any mistakes, we should run this function. And I see that we have a problem. What's the problem? Because docs.embedding, there is no docs.embedding, because we called our embedding, we called our column vector. Probably it would be better if I left it as embedding, but we called it docs.vector. So where you see docs embedding, change it to docs vector in these 3 places, 1, 2, and 3. Let's try to run it again. Success, no rows return, which means that everything is good. If I'm gonna go now to the database functions, we're gonna see that we have a new functions here, match documents, that will do the embedding for us, that will find the similar documents for us. The last step is to invoke this function. And to invoke a database function, It's super simple. You can go to Supabase, database, functions, and invoking a database function, we already can do with a JavaScript client. So here, SQL functions, we created them, and we can run them using the JavaScript by doing supabase.rpc, which is a remote procedural call, and the name of a function. So let's do that here in our So back into our prompt, we have a vector representation of a user query. What we have to do is we have to use await Supabase or Supabase client. For that reason, we need to create the client. I'm gonna look into the index. Creating a client is here, create client. Maybe we should extract it into a separate function. Supabase.js, and we can export this client from there. Make sure to create it as well. So let's do export default Supabase. And from index, we don't need to create the client anymore. We can simply do import Supabase from Supabase.js, and we can do the same in the other file prompt here. And we're gonna do supabase.rpc for remote procedure call. The name of a function, as we saw under that database functions, the name is match documents, and the parameters goes in the next one, the arguments. The arguments, remember, we have the, I can do edit function. I don't think it's right to see it here, but in the documentation, we saw that we have 3 arguments: the query embedding, the match threshold, and the match count. Let's actually copy them just to have the same naming. And for the query embedding, we need to send there the vector of our query. For the threshold, let's set that we want more than 20% similarity. 20% similarity is quite low, but I'm not sure like how similar the items in the query will be. So just in case, just to test it out. And we want to get the 2 most similar documents. Back, we're gonna get data and error. We can console log both of them just to see what is the output. Console log data. And we can go ahead and execute the prompt again. And as you can see, the error is null, but the response, and it was quite fast, are 2 documents, because we said that we want only 2 of them. And it's the create a project with a similarity of 0.6, and it's start developing documentation with a similarity 0.5. If we go ahead and say that give me only above 0.6 similarity and do it again, it's going to return only 1, I guess. Yes, only this one. And if we go back to 0.2 and change the prompt to something how to deploy, then it should find the other documentations, like build your project for App Store with a higher similarity. And actually I can maybe do all of them 0.01 just to see like how they rank. So for this query on how to deploy, the builder project for App Store has a higher similarity. Then we have start developing, submit app to app stores, instant updates, create a project, introduction, and so on. If we're going to be more specific with our query, how to deploy to App Store, which we have a documentation about that, I think the first document will have a higher similarity. Submit to App Store 49, and before it was 38. So just by changing a little bit the query more specific to this documentation, it increased the similarity between it. So that's how we do the similarity search, guys. At the core of it, it's just a matter of operator, a similarity operator, like this one, cosine distance in our case. And because Supabase doesn't yet support these operators on the client, we had to create this database function that is running this query using the similarity search. And based on a vector, it finds all the other vectors that are the most similar to it. And it's also returning us the score, the similarity score from 0 to 1. Whew, that's nice. That's actually almost half of our system before we move to the UI, of course. We have a user prompt, we generate the embedding, and we find the most relevant docs based on the similarity. The last step is going to be to use these docs to send it to a large language model and say, hey, based on this content, give me an answer. And then we're not only going to have like recommendations like, hey, this is where you can find more information, but we're also going to have a short answer generated by generative AI, generative model. Before that, give me just 1 second. I'm gonna be right back and we continue with that step. So yeah, if you have questions, please let me know and I'm gonna answer them when I come back. I'm gonna be 1 minute. All right, guys, so I'm back. Whew. Francesco is saying lots of possibilities. Yeah, then indeed, there is a lot of ways to apply this one too. And as I said, yeah, the last step. The last step, as we have data here, let's select the two most relevant documentation pages that are higher than, I don't know, 30%. And based on those two documentations, what we want to do in the next step is to feed them into a large language model, something like a completion API, something like GPT 4.0, which is the latest model from OpenAI. Okay. Let me. So first in this embeddings.js, besides, I'm gonna have not only embeddings but completions as well. So we're gonna need a function called completion. Async. We're gonna have a prompt, and it should call the OpenAI, not embeddings, but the completion API. So const response equal await OpenAI dot completion dot create. We're gonna create a completion using a model, a completion model. What is the free? Why do we have only them? GPT 3.5. I don't know. Let's see the documentation. Models on OpenAI. So we go to the GPT 4.0, and this is the most advanced model. It was released quite recently. It's quite fast, and it has like this text generation or text completion. So this is the model that we're gonna use. GPT 4.0. GPT 4.0. But what else does it need for the completion? Quick start. Sending your first. This is completions. Completions, create. We need to specify the model. And I think we need the what? Only the message, like the message, the prompt, right? Yeah. So we need an array of messages so that the completion knows like the history of the communication. But because we only have first like one message, we're gonna do it like this. The role is going to be the user is writing, and the content is going to be the prompt that we're gonna send. Content, prompt. What's up here? Messages, right? No? Messages. Create, no? Oh, it's OpenAI.chat. Yeah, client.chat.completions. Okay. OpenAI.chat.completions. Then we have a model, then we have a message with a prompt. Response. And this is going to give us a couple of options, and we're going to simply return the response dot choices, the first choice. So this basically is a wrapper around, let's say, ChatGPT. We can give it a prompt, it's going to complete and answer it to us. So we can take this completion, go to the prompt.js, and when we prompt, we can do const answer equal await. Let's do completion on the I don't know, what is 2 plus 2? Just to test it out to see if the completion API is working. Let's update the import from embeddings, and let's do console log answer. We don't need the error, the data. We can go ahead and execute this prompt. And as we can see, the answer from the completion API from GPT model is 2 plus 2 equal 4. And that's it. That's right. That's what you'd expect the GPT to do. You ask a question and it completes it. It gives you an answer. Now what we want to do is we want to tell him like, hey, the user asked a question, give us a response, but we're also going to provide you with some context. So we are going to, where is it? So we're going to do a little bit of prompt engineering, and I'm not sure like it's very fun to do that part. So maybe I can just provide it here. So we're gonna have a build a prompt function that will have a query and that will have documentations, that the context with the documentations that we want to base our answer to. And our prompt will start like this. Hey ChatGPT, answer the question that the user posed in the user query section, this user query, using the provided context. So the prompt that we give to the ChatGPT is this one. Then we provide the user query. Then we provide the context boilerplate with information about the context. And here is, hey, now give us the final answer. So if I'm gonna go ahead and call this build prompt at the end, const field prompt using build full prompt, we need to give here what did the user ask. But the prompt the completion needs to know like what is the user asking us. And the context, I'm gonna give it like empty string, just like that. Now let's see what is going to be our field prompt. The field prompt is this one. This is what we send to ChatGPT. Answer the question posted in the user query section using the provided context. User query, how to deploy to App Store, because that's what we are asking. Then we are not providing any context yet. We're going to do that in a moment. And here should go the final answer as a response. If we just send this prompt to our completion API, so let's move it below. Instead of what is 2 plus 2, let's give here field prompt. And let's even do like a more general prompt, how to deploy. And let's just see what is going to be the answer. If we run this prompt now without any context, just like how to deploy, then a general purpose model is not going to be very effective because it doesn't know a lot of context on how to deploy. So the answer is, to answer the question how to deploy, more specific context is needed to provide accurate guidance like AWS and so on. As you can see, it's not like what we need for our Expo documentations. And at this moment, what I'm doing here, this is a simple LLM integration. Like we're integrating with a GPT, a general purpose model. Now, if to this prompt, we're gonna give the content of our documentation pages that we found are the most relevant to this, now we are augmenting the prompt, making this a RAG system, Retrieval-Augmented Generation. So we need to merge together like our documentations. But in this data that we have here, console log data, I'm gonna comment out for a second. We need the contents of the documentations, but in the data that we have only the slugs, the slugs and the URL to the documentations. In our database, we don't store the actual content of the documentation because that would be too much, like too much data. But having the slug, we can go ahead and fetch them again. So let's see how did we do that in the index. We have these parse docs. Maybe we can again extract them to to a docs parser.js, because these parse docs, we're gonna need it as well. Let's copy it from here into the docs parser, and let's do export const parse export docs. Front matter should be moved here as well. And in the index, we need to import the parse Expo Docs. That's good. And these parse Expo Docs, based on a slug, it can give us back the content. It can fetch it from the GitHub. That's what we need in the prompt, having this information, the information about an array of pages. So const docs equal, we're gonna have to loop through data.what? Data.map through every doc. What we want to do with it is we want to call parse Expo Doc because we have only the ID, but we also need the content, doc.id. Let's make sure to import them here. And this is going to return us an array of promises so that we have to do await promise.all. And then the docs, if I console log them, should already be full with information from Expo, refetched from their GitHub, with most up to date, basically. Yes, indeed, that's what happened. For the two documents that we found similar, we went ahead and reparsed them again, and now we have their body and their titles. Now that we have here the docs, we are going to what? We just want to store their bodies into one single string, like this body and this body. We want to concatenate them into one single string. How to do that easier? We're gonna extract the bodies, so const docs bodies equal to docs.map, where for every doc we're only going to take the body. So now this is an array of strings because body is a string. And having an array of strings, we can concatenate them into one single string by calling concat, and here an array of strings, docs bodies, where actually we need to destructure them. So now if I do console log contents, I expect one single string with both bodies concatenated. Yes, it's a string. At the top it should be the first page, at the bottom it should be the second page. Now we can take these contents and give it as the context for our function that will build our full prompt. This docs context is gonna go here in the prompt as well. So let's see the answer now. Remember previously the answer, if I didn't provide any context, the answer was very generic because it didn't know information about our system. So how to deploy? It's gonna say something about very generic answer. Yeah, basically prepare your application, AWS, Google Cloud, and so on. So not very helpful for our Expo Docs. Now, if I'm gonna send the contents of the most similar documentations to this prompt, let's see what's gonna happen now if we run the same prompt, how to deploy. What do we see here? Now we see a much more complex prompt. It says answer the question based on this. This is the user query and this is the context. All the information from Expo Docs. And at the end, it says final answer, and the final answer should be what the completion gives us. So the content of the final answer is: to deploy your native app, you need to follow these steps to create a production build and submit it to the appropriate app stores. Create production build. So the same prompt, but now we're augmenting with our information, provides a much better response than a generic GPT model. So yes, all the steps for app signing, credentials, Apple App Store, final step to submit to App Store, and so on. Everything is here. So that's our final answer. Now we moved it for a GPT-4o model with a custom build prompt using the context. And in the end, we have the text answer, and also we have the links with their similarities so that we can redirect the user to the right documentation. That was intense, but that is our whole RAG system as a proof of concept with, of course, not production ready, but in a way to explain like how everything works, how everything is grouped together. And if I'm gonna do here like another prompt, maybe not how to deploy, but how to initialize a project without having to specify like an Expo project, because based on our documentation, it will understand that it's an Expo project. The final answer should be to initialize a project, follow these steps. Ensure we create a new project, start the development server, open the application, example, troubleshooting, and so on. Amazing, perfection. Oh boy, I'm so excited about this. It's just some some strings on the screen, but very, very exciting. Now I think that the next step that we have to do right now is gonna be to create a UI on top of it, to maybe move some of these tabs in the cloud, because everything right now is running locally, and to prepare it, to make it a little bit closer to like how a real RAG system would work. That's the next step, right? How is it going so far, guys? Are you enjoying it? If you enjoy it so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot. I put a lot of time preparing this project, but it takes a couple of seconds to subscribe, and it helps us grow and reach more developers like you. So thank you very much. I would appreciate that. And if you have any questions also, let me know down below. I'm interested in trying to help you. Is there a way to upload an app like the web, go into master branch and automatically upload to live production? Patel, yes, like if you want to automatically build and submit the application to the stores when you do when you push some code to GitHub, that's possible. You'd have to integrate like EAS, and you have like a GitHub action, like when something happens on your GitHub, you can trigger a build with EAS and then a submission with EAS. So it's not that complicated, but it takes a bit of like moving parts to put together, and I actually cover that in our the full stack mobile development course. Francesco, thank you very much. I appreciate it. What are you building? Do you have any ideas of where you can utilize this system? I'm curious to hear that. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna bring one more coffee, and we move to the second part, to putting everything together into to connect it with a user interface so that we can chat with our model. So I'm gonna be back in a second. I'm back. Hello. Okay, guys, so we have our system, as I said, as a CLI tool, like everything runs locally. The next step is going to be to integrate this in a project. The project, like the user interface that I'm going to build, is going to be using React Native and Expo, and we're gonna try to have it both for iOS and Android. So let's start by initializing a new project. I'm going to go ahead and move that on the side for a second, and I'm gonna go into a new terminal. And what do we have here? What? Okay, anyway, let's start by initializing a new Expo project using npx create Expo app at latest AI chatbot, and let's also do -- template to choose a template. The template I want to choose is going to be blank TypeScript. Are you an AI expert creator? No, definitely not. I am an AI hobbyist. I love it, and I'm experimenting, and I'm sharing my journey with you guys here. And today what we're building an AI chatbot for some documentations. In this case, for Expo documentations. And this is like a RAG tutorial, Retrieval-Augmented Generation. Salute, mostdev. Salute. Let's wait for our project to initialize. Come on, why it's taking so much time? Okay, a lot of warnings, but release date of React Native Mastery. The actual release of React Native Mastery is going to happen later in the year, probably in autumn, but the pre-sale is going to be in June. So we have already around 30% ready of the course. We're still working, and we're gonna give access to a small amount of people to help give us feedback as well. We're gonna have sessions with them, and they will receive early access as soon as we have it. DT saying everyone is busy building together with me. Yes. All right, so let's open our project in Visual Studio Code in a new window. Here we have our project. Let's go ahead and do npm start to start the development server. And I'm gonna run it on iOS simulator, or you can use your physical device using Expo Go and scan this QR code. Also, we're gonna probably run it on web as well. We'll see if we have time, but it's not very hard to make it web compatible as well. We just need to install some libraries. React Native Mastery is free or paid? It's going to be paid. That's going to be our premium course. Okay, so we have the project running here. Before I actually go ahead and start working on the UI, what I want to do is I want to connect this project with our Supabase project, because we use Supabase for our database, for the database with documentations, and also we're gonna use Supabase to do the similarity search. So in order to do that, first things first, we're going to open a new terminal and initialize the Supabase project here in our Expo application. Let's do that by running npx Supabase. Okay, I'm gonna delete my secret, don't worry. Supabase init. This will initialize the project. Here, let's answer yes to update the VS Code for Dino. And now we have a new folder Supabase here. The next step is going to be to link our local Supabase with a project that we created on Supabase dashboard. For that, we're gonna go into the project settings and we're gonna take the reference ID. Let's take the reference ID. Let's come here and say npx Supabase link -- project ref, and here paste the ID of your project. Where is your Ultimate React Native course? It's at notjust.dev/React Native Mastery. We're gonna try to paste a link in the description, so you're gonna find the link there, or you can go simply to our notjust.dev, and you should see oh, come on. You should see a banner on the top, so you can go right away here. Anyway, doing the Supabase, back to our project, doing the Supabase link project ref, we need to enter our password. The password that you created for your database. I told you to save it somewhere. If you cannot find it, you can go to your project configurations, to the database, and here you can do database password, reset database password. Now, after doing Supabase link, we have it linked here, and we will be ready to interact with it. One thing that we can do at this moment that maybe we're gonna need later is let's create a folder called source, and let's create a folder where types. This is where we're gonna store the types for our Supabase database. We can pull them automatically using npx Supabase gen types. We're gonna use TypeScript. By providing that -- linked, we're gonna push them from the remote, from the database that we linked to. And here we're gonna store them in source/types/supabase.ts. If we run this command, it's going to push the types of our database, and we have here the database with functions, with tables like the table doc, which has ID, title, URL, and also interesting, it has also the functions match documents for the similarity search. Cool. So let's think. I'm gonna bring back the other VS Code window if I can find it. The chatbot scripts that we have built. The part where we handle doc, like the first flow here, where we retrieve and ingest the documents, it's okay if we do that locally. Maybe in production you'd want to also do it like somewhere remotely on a server, but we do it like only once, so it's okay for us for this proof of concept to do it locally. I mean to initialize it locally. However, the user prompting, at the moment, we are also doing it the prompt.js, like this run prompt function. we are doing it locally. Yes, we are calling like a Supabase mesh documents, but still we are generating the embedding locally here on our machine using OpenAI. For that, we need the OpenAI API key. So everything happens here. I mean, not everything, let me not confuse you. The API calls are happening locally. If we try to move like this function, run prompt to our Expo application, we're not gonna be able to do that locally there, because in that case, that means that we're gonna have to expose our API keys in our application, which is not the recommended way. Like, you should avoid using private API keys in your client-side code, being it an application or a website. So that means that the part where we generate the embedding, or actually the whole running the prompt, this should be moved on a server. Where we do that, it really depends. We can create an Expo API route and do it there, but for that we're gonna have to deploy the API, the Expo API. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Supabase function. Supabase have edge functions that we can initialize and run in the cloud. These are basically simple functions that are run on the server side. So here it's safe for us to use private keys. To create a function, we just need to run npx supabase functions new and the name of a function. Let's do that here. And the function that we're going to create is going to be responsible for running this prompt. It's going to generate the embedding, it's going to find the matching documents, and it's going to do the completion with the LLM. So everything from the prompt.js, we need to move that to an edge function. Let's go to our Expo project. And here, let's go ahead and create a new Supabase function by running npx supabase functions new, and let's call it, I don't know, prompt? Okay, now what happened is that we have a Supabase functions folder, and here we have the prompt with the index file. This index is a Dino file. Dino is quite similar to Node.js, but it's a different environment. It's a different engine. So there is a bit of differences, like how we import stuff, but for everything else, like the code that we execute, like it's similar to Node.js. So this is a simple function that receives the name from the request headers, and it returns the hello name as a response. We can try to run it locally. For that, you're gonna need to have Docker set up on your system, and you can check how to run Supabase local by going to their local development setup. And yeah, again, you need to have Docker desktop running, and then we can run Supabase start. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna open the terminal. I'm gonna do Supabase start. In our case, it's npx supabase start. This should start the Docker containers. I already have one of them, so I'm going to have to run Supabase stop, npx Supabase stop, in order to start a new project. And then I can do Supabase start. It's taking a bit of time to set up everything and running Supabase locally. And now, as you can see, everything on our Supabase is also running locally, not only on Supabase dashboard. So now what we can do, as you can see here, where Supabase start, I think we also need to do Supabase functions, where the database function, not the database functions. Let me check. Well, I'm gonna go to the Supabase edge functions guide, create an edge function, Supabase new, we wrote the code, we started, and we need to do Supabase functions serve to start a watcher that will show us the logs for our functions. So let's do npx Supabase functions serve. If I do that, it should start our function. And in another terminal, we can send a request to that function, an HTTP request that you can also find in the in your code. It was generated at the end, and I can copy all of that from here, paste in my terminal to send a post request to my prompt function. If I send it, I see that the response is JSON with a message hello functions, because functions is what we sent as data there. So this is a Supabase edge functions running locally. To deploy it to Supabase dashboard, all we have to do is do npx Supabase functions deploy, and we can also provide the name if we want to deploy only one. The name of our function is prompt, and it's bundling prompt deploying. And shortly, our function prompt has been deployed to our project. If I go to Supabase dashboard, under the edge functions here, we see a function called prompt with details about it, with a public endpoint accessible from anywhere, not only locally. We have metrics, invocations, and logs that we're gonna use a bit later. So now this function is a server function that we can call from our application. We can call it quite easily from our Supabase client. And maybe I should already start calling it, right? Yeah, let's just start calling it, and then we're gonna slowly deploy it. So I'm going to re-execute the Supabase gen types command to regenerate the types so that it includes the new function that we can call. On our user interface, I'm going to add, let's do in app.tsx, I'm gonna add a text input from React Native. Let's render a very simple input that we can already start prompting with a placeholder prompt. Let's store the value of this text input in a state. Let's do query set query use state empty string. The value of our text input the value is going to be our query, and the onChange text we're gonna call set query. Now we can write here a prompt. Should I add some style just to look just a little bit better? I don't know, let's try. I'm gonna add some padding, like 10, border color Gainsborough, border width 1. Okay, and of course border radius. Even if it's a proof of concept, like without border radius, we cannot do it. And I will remove from the container the align item center, and I'm gonna add to this container simply padding 10 or 20. Okay, that's good. After the text input, let's add a simple button that will have a title, I don't know, send or run. Run. You better run. And I don't need any text at the top. So now we can write here a prompt, we can press run, and when we do that, what we want to do is we want to call our prompt edge functions that we just created. So for that, we need the JavaScript Supabase client in our React Native application. So let's look how we installed it in our scripts, but now we need Supabase.js npm to install it again in our application by running npm install Supabase.js. Let's do that here in our project. Let's create in the source a new folder called lib with the supabase.ts, and in this supabase.ts, let's create our client. We're gonna import create client from Supabase.js. We're gonna create it and then export default Supabase. We need here the URL and the anonymous key. We can provide them through environment variables because these are public keys. So I can create environment variables with the prefix expo public underscore, let's do what's the Supabase URL, right? Supabase URL. And the second one is going to be expo public Supabase key. So for the Supabase URL, we're going to take it from our dashboard again, from our project settings. Under API, we have a URL. And for the key, we're going to take this anonymous key, the public key. These are safe to be shared in the client-side code, so that's why we must prefix them with expo public so that they will be used in the public code, because we need them to generate the Supabase client here using process.env. How did we call it? Let's copy Supabase public URL. And this one is Supabase key. And I think we should also provide like empty strings as default because it complains that this environment variable can be undefined. In order to make this client typed, we're going to provide the database types that we generated with the gentypes command. So by simply providing here database that is imported from the types Supabase, now our Supabase client is going to know like what tables we have, what functions we can call. Okay, with that in mind, now we can finally go back to app.tsx and provide here a function run prompt. That is going to be an async function, which we will call when we click on this run button. So on press, it's going to do run prompt. And when we try to run prompt, we're going to call the Supabase client. Let's call Supabase, which is imported from our library, which we just initialized here. And we're gonna call the, is it also an RPC? I think so. No, it's not an RPC. It's functions, and the function name is prompt. And I'm not sure why it doesn't know that it's a function. Let me check how to call this function. developing edge functions. We deployed it, and invoking it in JavaScript is supabase.functions.invoke. Okay, functions.invoke. So we invoke the prompt, and we need to send there some information. If we look at our supabase functions prompt, at the moment it expects the name, but I'm going to soon change it to a prompt. So, or to the query actually, but it's just a matter of how we call it. But what I intend to do is the query that the user wrote in the text input, I want to send to that prompt. Name query. No, you don't want to. Object literal name does not function for options. Oh, it's body. Yeah, body. So for the body, we're gonna send the query. And let's see the data and the error that we receive here. So if error, let's do console log error. Otherwise, let's do console log data and see what is the answer from that function. Supabase URL is required. That's because we need to rerun our project so that the environment variables will be taken into consideration. Is Supabase like an OSS version of Firebase? Yes, exactly. That's how they are marketing. It's the open source Firebase alternative. But it's much more than that. Like what I like about them is that they are built on top of Postgres, and they inherit a lot of the power of Postgres database. For example, like these database functions, this is a function, this is a feature of Postgres, which allows us to do a lot of stuff. And I'm not talking about edge functions. Edge functions are a Supabase feature, but the database functions that we developed previously for finding the matching documents, that was created using Postgres functions. How long is the stream? Like 2 hours. Okay, I can feel it already. But let's try here. Hello. If we run, we see edge functions return non-200 status code. Okay, that's interesting. That's because what? We didn't send there a name. Let's try to send there a name, hey, or body. And if I run it again, it didn't work. But why didn't give us the error? Await Supabase functions, if error, console log error. I can go back to my dashboard under the edge functions. I can open the prompt and I can look at the logs. What happened there? Nothing. Oh, maybe it's about the 400 prompt. Did I call it correctly? Prompt. Maybe it's not allowed to do it. Details. Prompt. Maybe I should delete the GVT verification because we are not signed in. But why it doesn't tell me that I'm not signed in? Data function HTTPS error. I would expect it's failed. Edge functions returned status. But what's the status? So let's try to go into the configuration because we didn't add authentication. So the user doesn't have a token. So let's try to disable this one, save, and try again. Run, reload, run. Edge functions return something. Let me try to invoke the endpoint using the same code that we had before here, that we tested the locally deploy function. So here, instead of this local IP address, if I'm gonna give the remote one, it's not found. Request function is not found. Prompt requested functions. Matrix. Not found. Why? Invocations. 404. What is not found? Can it be because of the issues that we are going through right now? Doesn't seem like fix. Edge function seems to be operational. Execution time deployment. V1 functions. Let me try to get this one. Requested function was not found. Prompt. Anyone sees anything? The technical issue banner. Yeah, but I don't think it should affect the edge functions, but maybe. I love it. I love errors. One function deployed. So yeah, it should work. Slug prompt. I'm thinking maybe I use some kind of requested function was not found. Let me check. Because I can use locally as well, but I think locally I'll have another error. Requested function were not found. Supabase edge. Maybe I don't think that I need to change anything here, but anyway, let's try. Edge functions return. No, it's the same. Invoke prompt. You can what? Maybe I should try to redeploy it again. You know, let's try to run npx supabase. Or I will do a small change. For example, in supabase functions index. For example, not taking the name, but taking the query. And let's do hello query. And okay, I'm going to do npx supabase functions deploy prompt. Okay. You can inspect, and if I try to call it now it works, you see? So it was just a matter of redeploying it. Now, if in app.ts, I'm not gonna do name, but actually, if I'm gonna send the query, let's see what's going to be the data. Message, hello, and the thing that we wrote here. So that means that we can invoke the remote function from our React Native application by simply calling Supabase functions invoke the name of the function, and here we are sending the data. Now everything in our edge function is going to run on the server, either locally or in our on Supabase dashboard, like on Supabase side, using the edge function. So now if we look at the logs, everything goes okay. Invocation, we should have 200 status code. Yeah, it was a matter of just redeploying it again. Perfecto. Thank you very much for mentioning that. So that means that now it's the time to slowly move, as I said, to move the prompt.js file from our scripts that we did before, to move them to our edge function. And the first step we had here is to generate the vector embedding for the user query. So I'm gonna copy this code, generate embedding, to our to our edge function in Supabase functions prompt index. And after having the query, let's do it like this. I'm going to do generate embedding. That means that I need this file function generate embedding here. Let's go back to our scripts. The generate embedding is coming from our embedding.js, and it's this function. I can copy the imports and the first function to generate, I think even the completion I needed. So I will copy everything from here back in our project where we have serve. At the top, let's bring in the generate embedding function, the completion function, and the imports. For here, it says that we need to specify the type, so the input is going to be a string. The prompt is going to be a string. And as I said, because we are using Dino, the imports are a bit different, because in Dino, we do not install NPM packages, we import them right away using a URL. So if we actually open OpenAI NPM package here, we see in the installation, one way is to do npm install. This is for Node.js, but they also mentioned how we can import it in Dino by using this URL. So let's try that. And let's try to import OpenAI here at the top from this URL. And I think it's not going to work. I had the same issue because if I open this URL, it says that 404 not found. So maybe the latest version was not updated yet. And if I do not .2 but .1, it's going to show me correctly. So I'm also going to change it in my import here. Later, when you're watching it, probably it's going to be a different version, but that's totally fine. You might also want to use the same version to have the same environment. So we have OpenAI, we have it here. We are generating embeddings. We have a completion function. So last step is to go ahead and do a console log the vector, maybe for the data that we return. Let's just say vector dimensions. Let's call vector.length. And just to make sure that we generated a correct vector if it didn't fail. Now with this code, I'm going to go ahead and redeploy the function by running npx supabase functions deploy prompt. And now we can do hello here. We can look at the Expo logs. And if I run, edge functions return an error. That means that something didn't go well. Let's look at that. Oh, I think I know, like we didn't provide the API, OpenAI API key. But to inspect that, we go to the edge functions, we go to our function, and we look at the logs. We see the error, and we see OpenAPI key environment variable is missing or empty. Perfect. That means that we have to provide it. Let's look at Supabase secrets documentation. And this is a documentation explaining how to manage environment variables. So what? Local secrets. You can set them up locally, and then you can synchronize them with your remote. Or what I'm looking for is this command, npx supabase secrets set, and then the environment variable and the value. So that means that I'm gonna go here in my terminal, and I'm gonna do npx supabase, and you're gonna see my secret, but I'm gonna delete it later. Supabase secrets set open AI underscore API underscore key, and here provide your OpenAI secret key. This is going to set this secret key on Supabase dashboard, and it's going to be available in your function. I'm not sure if it's going to be automatically taken from there, so we can try running again this prompt. And actually it worked. So it will automatically be taken from the environment there without us having to access it. And that's because, yeah, we uploaded the environment variables. You can go to your project. You can go to where? Should be secret somewhere. Reports, real time. Somewhere here should be secrets, which I'm missing, but you're gonna find them if you are really looking for them. Anyway, going back, that means that we see the vector dimensions correct, which means that we generated the embedding correctly remotely on the edge functions. And we can actually see that if we go to the edge function prompt in the logs, we're going to see that the last one showed us the whole embedding here. Perfect. Looking at this function, the first step was to generate the vector. Let's look at our code that we built previously for prompting. After generating the vector, what do we need next? We need to call the Supabase RPC match documents to find the most similar documents, right? Let's do that in our Supabase edge functions. After getting the Dino, let's do supabase.rpc. We are already running in Supabase, so let's see how we can get access to this Supabase client. Supabase client edge function. With Supabase JS, Supabase client, it's as simple as doing create client. And I think these are provided by default, so we don't need to do anything. We just need to create the client. So let's just import this URL on how to import the Supabase JS library in our edge function. We're going to import it here. And I'm going to create the client in the deno.serve somewhere here at the top, const Supabase equal create client. And I believe we don't have to specify them, or we do. Yeah, we do. And we're gonna then take it from the environments because they will be automatically available. The Supabase URL and the key will be automatically available in the environment of our edge function. So that means we have a super base. We can execute the method on our database called mesh documents based on the vector that we generated. Here is data that we can call, I don't know, similar docs. And let's do a console log similar docs just for us to see if so far it's working. I'm gonna go ahead and redeploy the function. Building the prompt. Here we're gonna run how to initialize a project. Run. It worked. It didn't give us anything back, of course, not yet. But if we go to our edge functions in the logs and reload them, we will see an array with 2 pages with their similarities. So that means that we are currently correctly fetching the similar documents from the database. And we can move forward with our prompting. Now that we have a similar docs, let's look what we did with them. We have data, we mapped through them, we build the contents, then we build a prompt, and then we build the completion. I think I'm gonna copy everything from here and move them to our function here. Maybe I should do some comments, right? So here, generate embedding for user query. Here is find similar docs. Similar word, let's call it relevant. Relevant docs to user query. Now using these similar docs, we are gonna map through them. And for every doc, here we are going to merge docs into one single string. So we need this parse Expo Docs function. Go back to our project. Parse Expo Docs was taken from here. Let's copy it. We need it in our edge function as well. I'm not sure if we can separate things in the edge functions. Most probably we can, and most probably I should have done it. But now I'm just putting everything into one single function, into one single file, which makes it a bit hard to work with, but we're getting there. Anyway, this slug is a string, and the importing of front matter, I think we can import it like this, npm and then front matter. How to do it? Dino import npm package. The easiest way, yeah, npm and then providing the version. So what's the version? Front matter npm 4.0.2. At 4.0.2. Now we're supposed to have a parse doc function that will bring us back the documentation. We need the build full prompt. Let's get the code for it. The build full prompt should be here, which takes the user query, takes the document, the context. I'm gonna add it at the top. This is a string. This is a string. And let's see what do we have next. For this doc, I'm gonna simply do any for now. So we have answer completion. The completion API is coming from where? Yeah, we moved it here, so it's using the same OpenAI. Completion, console log answer, and I think we can try to return the answer already. So if I return the answer and redeploy the function, if we didn't do any mistakes by copy pasting like our code from the scripts here, it should work. So if I go here and run again, it should take a bit of time because now it's generating, it's doing the completion API and so on. Did I press it? Yes. But in the end, we have the answer to initialize a project, follow these steps, create, and so on. That's exactly what we needed. So in the app.tsx, we can go ahead and do const messages, set messages. Let's do use state. And the messages, when we get back the data, let's do set messages. And let's append the new message to the current ones. Current. And the last one is going to be data. Data dot what? Well, wait a second. The answer here from completion, it's a choice. So what's that? Answer. I think it should be dot answer dot message dot content. Dot message dot content. Let's call it message answer, so that in our app.tsx we can take data, something like that. And I'm going to render them somewhere on the screen, the messages. How to init run after receiving it should add to that array. Answer. Oh, I didn't redeploy. I need to redeploy. Oh, that's getting interesting. Message. What did I do? Oh, I need to do this one. Answer.message.content. How to init a project. And it gives us the message with a message, an array, an object that has a message. And in the next step, we're gonna have to also return the URLs where it took this information from. But first, let's go ahead and render them somewhere, probably in a flat list. Flat list from React Native. The data is going to be our messages. And for render item, we're gonna have, for every message item, we're going to render some kind of a view, and inside of it, a text. Come on. And inside there, a text. with the item.message. And do we have it? Or it, yeah. And let's do here a prompt, how to deploy. If I run, let's see what's going to render on the screen. Probably it's gonna have like a lot of text, but okay, here it is. Here is the steps. To deploy your app, you need to create a production build, and so on, and so on, and so on. And all the steps, exactly how to do it. And it was taken out of the documentation. Okay, that's cool. And I think that now what's left to do to make it as a proper RAG system is to also show like the sources, like where did you take it from? So that means that from our function, from our edge function, besides returning the generated text as a message, we should also return the links or the similar docs. We're gonna return them as docs, similar docs, and let's see now what's going to be the messages here after redeploying. Now if I'm going to run it again, it should also contain what's happening here? Too much text. Let me reload. What is the command to run? I want a prompt that will give me a shorter amount of text. To run, to generate a new project. To generate a new project. Let's run. I hope it's gonna give me a little bit less text. Yes, it's just like bash to generate a new project, run the following command, bash, and so on. But besides the message, it also has this array of docs, which with object and object. And I can use this array of docs to render here maybe a text, read more, and loop through this item dot, how's it called? Docs, item dot docs. I will map through these docs, and for every similar doc, or yeah, for every doc, I will want to render a text where we have a doc title, right? Doc dot, probably it should be title. Let's just see this. And we have a lot of TypeScript errors, but that's good. What command to run to init a project? I like that it was very short. Okay. And we have a van there, read more, create a project and start developing. And these tags can be actually links that would open and redirect you to the documentations where you can read more. Okay, perfect. So like it's very ugly, but it works. And I think the next step for us is to make it look a little bit better. Maybe improve on some of the stuff that we have here. But anyway, like based on like what we have, it's working. So it's a matter of improving on it, building a better UI around it, not like this one, and maybe even running it on web. That would be nice. Will the broadcast stay on the channel later? Yes, it's going to stay on the channel later. Give me just a second. I need the third coffee during this stream, and we are going to continue the build, improving the UI, having the web version as well, and maybe improving something on the edge function. So see you very, very soon. Okay, guys, I am back. Third coffee is here. Francesco is saying the plumbing part was the hardest part. The UI part is the easier for you. Yes. And now I think it's time to get into the UI and to make this application look really nice. What do you say? Think makes sense, right? So where do we start? Probably styling a bit the messages. The messages here on the screen, right? So I'm gonna start with style message container. Let's give here message container. Oh boy, it's very hard. Don't have a lot of. Should we just do? Should we get some inspiration from OpenAI in terms of colors and so on? Hello. Oh boy. So, what UI are we gonna build? Padding 10, border radius 5. Okay, something is happening. Let's go ahead and add. Maybe I will do the flat list as inverted, so it starts at the bottom. Okay, that's good. And we're gonna scroll up. For messages, we need some gap between them. So let's do content container style. Let's add a gap of 5. Even 10 is going to be nice. I think we will also would like to keep the what user is searching as a message, right? So let's also set a message for the user. So at the beginning, the message is going to be message. It's the query of a user. And maybe we can have a is user true. And then we're going to check if this is a user one, we're going to show it somewhere else. Let's do to run a project. If I execute this one, map doesn't work. Why? Cannot read map of undefined. Oh, because it doesn't have docs here. Yeah, the docs will be only. It's optional. Okay. I will also want to reset the query. After I do that, set query to empty string. If I press run, it's going to add it here, and the answer is going to add it on top. So I think I need to do it the other way around. I need to add things at the top of a list because we inverted the list and everything else at the end of it. Same things here. And now if I'm going to do the same, what command to run to init a project run. It's going to be here, and I expect the answer to be below. Yes, perfect. The text input style, let's add a margin vertical to it, 10. Okay, there is some separation. For the message container, let's do if it's my message to display it conditionally on the left, so it's like a chat. Let's add some margin left if the item dot is user. I will add 50 pixels on the left, otherwise 0. I need to do that to copy that one. So if I run this one, it's going to be here, and the answer will be full width because it needs a lot of content. Okay, that's good. That's fine. For the read more, let's do style, font weight, bold, margin, top 10 or even 20. And here we're gonna have the text, which should actually be links. Let's style them a bit. Styles.link. I'll add a border color gray, border width 1, maybe a style sheet dot hairline width. Let's add some padding 10. On the whole container, do we have a container there for these ones? No. Then I'm gonna just simply add here margin vertical 5 and border radius 10. Okay, so we have titles. Maybe we can do font weight 500. And whenever we press on one of these links, should they also be a different color? Royal blue. Okay. Whenever we press on them, we want to open the link. We have that link there. It's just a matter of opening it. So I think with React Native, we are going to do that using on press. It's with linking package from React Native dot open URL, and the URL is going to be doc.url. So let's try. Create a new project. If I press, it's going to open the browser on the Expo Docs, create a project, because we have that in our database. Start developing, we open, start developing. So it links correctly. Now probably it's time to add some icons. So Expo vector icons. Source, I don't know, link or open. Let's import this one in our here and render it inside the text here, or we should put them simply in a view. And have a text side by side with the icon. The styles will go on the view, not on the text. Link container. And on the text, we're just going to have styles.link text. So let's add some link container styles. which will get the border, padding, vertical, radius, and so on, and only the color and font weight will remain on the link itself. I'm gonna put them on the same row, so flex direction row, and justify content, space between to put it there, and maybe align items center. Okay, that's good. And for the icon itself, I think 18 size is going to be enough. And here, gray should be good. Or dark gray. No, not dark gray. Dim gray. Okay. Or maybe also royal blue. Yeah, can be. Okay, so now, now our linking is only on the text, which means that we have to move it on the container itself. So I'm gonna switch from a view to a pressable so that I can move on press from the text to the container. So even if I press on the container, it opens the documentations. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna decrease a bit the color here, dim gray. For this, read more. Looks good. And the read more will be there only if there are docs. So let's add a conditional, because I see read more here on the others as well. So if there are docs, let's render the text. Read more. Okay, now it doesn't show here, but it shows here. How to run on a physical device. Takes a bit of time. Okay, here, to run on a physical device, follow these steps, start the development server, open, and so on, and we can read more in these pages. And if I do how to deploy to App Store and run, now it should have like different references, different pages, because it's a different topic. Okay, to deploy to App Store, this is the prerequisites, this is what you have to do. Before I move on, before I improve a bit like how we render stuff, I wanted to switch from a button here to an icon, similar to how we have ChatGPT here. So let's see an icon, arrow up. On ChatGPT is arrow up with a background. Something like this. Let's do this one. So I'm gonna import font awesome. And let's render it after the text input with a gray. And on press, I'm gonna run the prompt. So we no longer need the button. We're gonna put them into the same view, the text and the icon, so that I can align them in the same row. Justify content, not justify content, but flex direction row. And the text input will have flex 1 to take all the available space, and the other one will go to the end. Here I'm gonna do a gap of 10 to add some spacing between them, and an align items center to put them in the center. We can increase the font size here. Okay, looks good, looks good. Maybe I should increase the padding of the prompt to 15. just to have more spacing around things. I will do it's good, looks good. Okay, good. We have something. What command to run to init a project? Now what I want to do is maybe I want to change a bit the way how we render stuff, because this is markdown content and we are simply rendering as a string. In React Native, we can parse and render the markdown. So let's look at React Native markdown library. I think I was using markdown display, and we can install the markdown display and having some markdown is going to render it properly. So let's try to do that. First, let's install markdown display in our project. And then we have the markdown copy. It should be as simple as importing markdown. And instead of rendering the message in a text, if we render it in a markdown, hopefully, yes, as you can see, it renders as markdown. And if I do a more complicated one, how to deploy to App Store, I think it should also have like titles and so on. Let's see how that is going to happen. Yes, as you can see, it has a much better representation with numbered lists, with snippets, with titles, subtitles, and so on. Even a link like App Store Connect, if I click on it, it's going to work. And then I can read more. Okay, that's good. How to improve these styles? What would you recommend me? Or that's not the most important part? Either to make maybe to make it like this. I'm gonna steal the colors from here. So for the whole page, it's going to be this one. For the input, for the message is gonna be this one. For the the markdown colors, how to do it? Does it support dark mode? I don't think I'm gonna be able to display the markdown with the styles that I want. So I'm not gonna be able to use dark mode. Okay, now it's better. Yeah, guys. I think that I'm not gonna spend more time here on the styling. I'm gonna do a git add, git commit. Yeah. And most probably I'm gonna stop here because we have a pretty good working application. To take it from here, what we would have to do to improve on this project would be to go ahead and parse more pages. Because right now in our database, if we look in the table editor, we only parsed 6 Expo documentation pages. But by applying the same concept, by the same logic, and going through all of the documentations, and even running it locally, to parse the documentation is going to be to work fine. Is going to improve like the coverage of our AI bot, and then the rest is the same. Probably other ways you can improve the application is going to be to stream the response instead of waiting for this all the result until we display it. Maybe we can stream it and display it as it's being generated. That's also possible. That would be interesting to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you would like to interact with this application, and I will try to see, like, if there is interest, maybe I can host it somewhere so you can play around with this bot. Maybe you can ask him questions about Expo related stuff. One other way you can improve it is including other docs as well, like from React Native itself. In that case, you can talk and ask any kind of React Native questions, maybe even parse blog posts and so on. If you want to add web support for this application, all you have to do is install React Native DOM on web, or easier, set up Expo Router. If you set up Expo Router, following the installation guide, you're gonna install React Native Web and React Native DOM, and your application will automatically work on web as well. All right, guys, that was it. I don't feel very well at the moment, but I'm very happy with how the project turned out, and I hope that you enjoyed building this AI bot together with me. Anyway, this is the last live stream from this studio. Next time we're gonna see each other is gonna be from a new place, and I'm very excited for what's to come. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe and stay connected, and I will see you next time. All right, guys, bye-bye.